welcome to Real Talk Realtor Mama Edition. My name is Samantha. I'm a top real estate agent, entrepreneur, and proud mama of two, here to keep it real about life, business, and everything in between. This is the podcast where we explore challenges and blessings of balancing a thriving career, motherhood, and mental health, all while sharing tips, lessons, and stories to inspire and empower you. Some episodes, I'm joined by incredible guests, experts in finance, motivation, small business owners, and more to bring you insights that'll spark growth and ignite your potential. Sometimes it'll just be me and my strong opinions rambling away, but most importantly, I'm doing this for my own healing and learning and as my way of giving back. If my words or the stories shared here help even one person, then it's worth it to me. So grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and let's dive into today's Real Talk. Hello and welcome back. I kind of just sang that, didn't I? Welcome back to Real Talk Realtor Mama Edition. This is episode 7, and we're switching it up a little bit with this episode. So, as I mentioned before, this podcast is for me. I'm doing this for myself, right? I'm doing this because I enjoy educating and I would like to educate on the things I know about and share my resources and connections. But it's also for a bit of self-reflection. I feel like I've been on this kind of like self-discovery journey for a few years now. And I think that some specific situations have kind of caused me to really take a deep look at myself. And I figured out that, helping others in whatever way I can really gives me a sense of purpose and value. So here I am, and this episode is gonna be our first of many, maybe, heart work episodes. Okay, so any of my episodes that are the topics are more self-reflection, self-discovery geared, I'm going to label them as my heart work episodes. And when I say heart work, that really refers to understanding and managing the interconnections between your emotional well-being and your physical health, because stress and anxiety literally trigger the release of hormones that increase blood pressure, heart rate, inflammation, all of these potentially damaging things to your heart and your health over time. And depression and other mental health conditions lead to obviously unhealthy behaviors and other negative impacts on your habits, but it really negatively impacts your cardiovascular and overall health in general. So I think that when when I became a mother, my health, my mental health, my emotional health, all these things started to actually matter to me and take priority over anything else. So here we go. I'm digging back and trying to just figure out, where things started, what things stem from. What's the root cause of why I am the way I am? And as far back as I can remember, I've always struggled with mental and emotional health, depression of some sort. It's kind of followed me through my childhood into adulthood, and I've handled it differently in each phase of my life. Um, as a child, I remember lashing out. As a teen, self-harm landed me in a crisis center at 14. And as an adult, addiction became my only escape. And like I said, since becoming a mother, I've realized that I have to be a better person and I have to learn to cope better and figure out how to be a healthy mother to my children so that I can continue on this journey to break cycles for them. So I think, like I said, my heart work really began the moment I found out that I was pregnant, and that I wasn't going to give up this time. And I'll explain the giving up reference later, but for now, I'm just going to focus on where it all began. Um, so this isn't easy for me. Let me just start by saying that voicing my story and the things that have tortured my mind for so many years is painful. Um, and it's nerve-wracking. It's a little bit embarrassing, maybe. I don't know. But I've learned in my 34 years of living and figuring life out that I absolutely have to walk through the shit in order to get to the other side of it. And when you take a shortcut or you avoid things, they're always still going to be there lingering and festering under the surface. And I'm finally at the point in my life where I'm ready to face these things head on and out loud in order to get to the other side of the anguish they've caused me. Um, and I've found for me, reading and learning about things that I don't quite understand, writing them down, saying them out loud really just helped me process. So it's all like more of a holistic approach, I guess you could say, because I don't want to be relying on medication for the rest of my life. And I don't want to pass down unhealthy coping mechanisms to my children. So this is my attempt to heal myself. And the first heart work topic that we're going to be discussing is being fatherless and truly understanding how this has affected who I am as a person. Um, and fatherlessness is defined by the loss of a bond really between a father and a daughter through a range of circumstances, right? So it could be from death, divorce, abandonment, emotional neglect, incarceration, addiction, etc. Sometimes a combination of all these things. And some people become fatherless more than once in their lives because losing a father figure is just as much the same as losing your biological father. Um, so I have experienced father loss twice in two completely different ways at different points of my life, and I've literally ran from the truth and the effects of these losses my whole life. Maybe because I want it to seem stronger than what I actually felt. Maybe because I never had the proper support and guidance through it all. I don't really know. And I didn't know any better. I don't know. Um, but I want to begin by sharing some interesting facts that I discovered in my research that kind of helped me put some things into perspective. 80% of single parent households are fatherless, with 67% of those being African American families. 42% of fatherless daughters have mothers who are also fatherless in some way. Over 50% of women are fatherless. That is a staggering statistic, and it's sad. And 1/3 of fatherless households live below the poverty line. So, if you're listening to this and you have also experienced fatherlessness in some way, shape, or form, I pray that maybe even just hearing some of those statistics help you to know that you're not alone. And although nothing about being fatherless is normal, but you do have the power to heal and create a different life for yourself and your children moving forward. You don't have to let it define you, basically. So my mother, who was raised by my grandmother and her stepfather at the time, from the time she was a baby, her stepfather, who I know as my one and only grandfather, who was the main father figure in my life for 15 years, was quite literally a gift from God for the both of us. Her biological father was like in and out of her life, and he struggled with addiction his whole life. Ultimately dying at a young age. I think my mom was in her 30s. Um, and I know my mother struggled with the relationship she had with her father or lack thereof. I know that my grandfather played a huge role in how she was able to handle this growing up. And I also know that she's suffered two unimaginable father losses in her life. And I think that learning about this topic has helped me in so many ways, but one thing that I wasn't expecting was also to gain a deeper understanding of my own mother. She had me when she was 17, and I mean, I've said plenty of times before that we pretty much grew up together. There's so much that I didn't understand as a child, so many things that, like, made me so angry that I get now, and this understanding, I think, has given me some peace as well in my healing journey. Before I go much further, though, I just wanna add a little disclaimer here in case my mother and my father, who randomly comes across my shit, listens to this. This is my story, this is my version, and none of it is meant to hurt or upset you. And I say this specifically to my father because I remember one time a few years ago, I posted something about my father on Facebook. And if you know me, if you followed me, you know I have Facebook is one of the main tools I've used to grow my business. And one of the ways I've grown my business through Facebook is just being relatable and connecting with people and building relationships. And part of that is kind of being a little bit of an open book. I love to write. I'm not like an author or anything. Hopefully one day I will be, but I love to write and just express myself with words and at some points I have definitely probably used Facebook as somewhat of a diary. So, whatever. One day I posted, some things about my, I don't know, my experience with my father or something. And somehow this post made its way back to him and his girlfriend at the time who, I don't know, she got mad. Like, I don't know. Apparently, my truth was damaging to his current relationship somehow. They got in a fight about it or something. I don't know. Mind you, we had had little to no contact most of my life. So, um, anyway, my brother called me after this post and he was like sounding kind of in a panic, which was unusual of him. He's very like chill. Um, but he was pretty much advising me like not to post things about our father on Facebook. And I was like taken back, honestly. Um, my brother continued to tell me like this post somehow made its way back to our father and it like got him really mad. It like sent him into some kind of spiral. Like he went on some kind of drug binge or I don't know. I don't know what kind of binge, but he disappeared for a few days and after getting in like a big fight with his girl about it. And I don't know, like the panic or whatever it was in my brother's voice was kind of scary, and it almost was like he was like warning me, like that my father might actually like attempt to retaliate against me for this. Um, Shortly after that, my father had reached out to my mom on Facebook asking her for my address so he could send me a birthday card. Mind you, he sent me like one birthday card my whole life. So I was actually scared. I really believed at the time that he was gonna try and hurt me, and that was never a concern of mine. Of all the feelings he's given me in my life, that was never a concern of mine, so this was, like, a new one for me. I didn't like it, especially considering I had a baby at home and I wasn't actually sure what he was capable of. I don't know him, you know? So for a moment, that post I thought was gonna be, like, maybe the beginning of my healing out loud journey or whatever you wanna call it, and instead, those chain of events kinda shut me back down, and I closed Pandora's box, and I just kept it moving. But here we are, and now I no longer am going to allow any kind of fear to stop me from speaking my truth, which could potentially help someone. For a long time, I didn't feel heard at all. Um, so I'm gonna say whatever the hell I want. Um, as far as I know, though, my father never claimed me. My ha- my mom went into this like she chose to have me knowing that she was gonna be doing it herself, basically. And I mean, I know that during my early years, I used to spend some time at his mom's house in Darby. They literally lived like My father always lived, like, literally lived the town over from me. Um, but I would see him occasionally, like, in the first couple years of my life, and then that, like, stopped. I don't know why, how exactly, but it stopped eventually. Um, and actually, a few years ago, I was going through some of my mom's things, and I found a paternity test from when I was 2 years old. And I don't know if I ever realized how hard he actually denied me until I saw that paternity test. Um, so that was something. But growing up with a teenage mom and no father, my grandparents were really my saving grace. I mean, I truly believe that the love and the care they showed me in my early years of life was crucial for my development and honestly saved me in many ways. My mom drank a lot and she hung out with other people that drank a lot and probably did other drugs and whatever else. But she also worked a lot, obviously, to support me. So I'm in no way shaming her for any of this. I can honestly say that she did a hell of a lot better of a job than I would have as a teenage mother. However, these are some of the reasons we didn't have much of a relationship and there wasn't much love in my environment. There were times that we lived with other people. We moved around a lot. There were times I lived with my grandparents and my mother lived elsewhere. As a child, I couldn't help but feel sad sometimes and angry and confused and unloved and honestly worthless. Just trying to like wrap my head around the fact that I had no dad like other kids did, trying to understand why he didn't love me and most importantly, why he didn't want to protect me. But also not understanding why what my mother was going through and why it seemed like everyone else came first, including her boyfriends, who, mind you, were never upstanding citizens. My grandparents were really the only people I felt loved by for a long time. And even then, I was still yearning for my mother and my father's love. It's just natural, right? So, I mean, I've learned that my anxiety and depression is very deeply connected to my feelings of self worth and the fear of losing people that I love. And a lot of my anger comes from the feeling of abandonment. As I grew up, I tried to stop caring about the like no dad thing. My grandfather really stepped up for me in ways I will forever be grateful for. Um, I was also like informally adopted by by my best friend's family. I met her around I was around 12 years old, and they were just a huge influence on me. I mean, when I was at their house, I felt a sense of normalcy and like family. They took me everywhere with them, including like family vacations, and they were the reason I finally began to play sports. Um, they helped with the startup to get me on the softball team and the stuff that I needed for, to play. And my friend's stepdad was actually the coach of that first softball team I played for. And he was someone that I looked up to as a father figure. Just the way that he took care of his family, including the children that weren't biologically his, gave me, I don't know, hope maybe. I'm not sure like for what, but it definitely helped me see that there were some decent men out there. And I will forever love them for the way that they loved me and gave me a sense of belonging at such a crucial age. Beginning softball was really another key part of my life. Again, my coaches were men that I looked up to and viewed as father figures. And I played for years with the same coaches and the same girls. And I'm so, so blessed that I got to develop those bonds during my teenage years. I just think it was so important for me. And even though I do remember feeling jealous, like quite literally, of the girls around me with fathers, and especially the girls on my team and the girls whose fathers were coaches, um, because it was just, I don't know, they were so involved in their lives. It's just something that I was jealous of. And to this day, I love my coaches, and I still wish Fran would adopt me. Fran, if you're listening, I don't know if you will be, but just one of the best fathers I've ever seen or got the pleasure of knowing. Um, Again, someone who's given me hope in some way, shape, or form. But regardless of the people in my life that were there for me or that I looked up to, I still always had this sense of like not knowing who the fuck I was or like where I even belonged in the world, why I was even here. And I remember in my earlier years of school, I used to lie a lot. I lied about my family. I lied about who I was. I made things up so that people would like me. And I specifically remember telling people I was of a different ethnicity on many occasions. I was basically ashamed of who I was because I didn't know who I was. But for those of you that don't know me or don't know this, I am biracial. And I didn't grow up around any of my father's side of the family. Therefore, I got little to no exposure to the Black culture, let alone who my father actually was or what the people were like that were related to me by blood. And although I was raised in a, multicultural community and lived in many prominently Black neighborhoods, my mother always dated Black men. I was somewhat ashamed or embarrassed or something to have a Black father. Um, all of my white friends had fathers or at least father figures in their lives. So from a very, very like early age, the stigma surrounding Black men was very real for me. I can admit that I'm embarrassed to even be sharing this and saying this, honestly. Um, I never was and I never will be racist or prejudiced in any way, shape, or form. However, as a child, I was scared to be put into any categories or labeled or just like not liked. I'm very light skinned and I have freckles. So I would tell people that I was Italian, Puerto Rican, Spanish, whatever I felt like that day. Middle school, though, that's when I finally started being real with myself and my peers. And I remember feeling so scared and embarrassed to tell people that my dad was Black and that he wasn't around. But it turned out that it didn't matter to anybody except for me, but nobody cared. And by just being honest and still accepted, that helped me learn to accept myself a little bit more. So, when I was about 12 years old, my dad reached out to my mom from jail and, he acted like he was turning this new leaf and he wanted to get out and be a father and convinced her that he was going to step up for me. And he began writing me letters around this time. Um, Before I knew it, he was out. And sure enough, he showed up at my door one day to pick me up. And I just remember opening the door and seeing his face was honestly surreal. At that time, I don't remember the last time I had seen him before this, but I know that I didn't really know what he looked like, or I didn't remember at least. Um, Although he literally lived in the town next door from me my whole life, he looked like me, or I looked like him. He was much darker than me, obviously, but the way our facial features matched was uncanny. And that day he took me to meet my older brother for the first time. And to this day, I really don't even think I can accurately describe the types of emotions I felt that day. Um, but a few weeks later, he picked me up, and this time he had my brother as well, and we had, a day planned, and we're gonna spend the night at his house. And we hung out, we ate snacks, we were watching TV, and I think it was about like 7 or 8 o'clock. And he told me and my brother that he had to run to the store really quick and he would be right back. Mind you, my brother is a few years older than me. Um, but he never came back. And I mean, not until like 5 or 6 the next morning. And that was the last time I saw him for years. Come to find out, the reason he got out of jail and the reason he reached out to my mom was he needed the child support, like, charges or claim or whatever it's called, dropped. Like, that he was in jail because of child support. He had multiple baby moms at this time, and it was my mom and, like, other baby moms had child support claims or whatever open for him. Um, So he got them all to like drop them or close them or whatever it was, and that's how I got out of jail. So like in my mind was like, damn, all of that was fake, and he selfishly, manipulated us. Um so, that was like another loss almost at that moment, like losing him all over again or something, even though I didn't even know him still. Um anyway, that was the last time I saw him for years. And this like popping in, popping out behavior became a theme up until I was about 23 or 24. And by theme, I don't mean consistent. I mean every couple years, I would see him randomly, or he would reach out randomly. And the last time I saw him, I think I was like 23 or 24 years old, maybe. It was at one of my brother's fights. And because he used to do like MMA. And I just hated the way that I felt around him. And he didn't even say much to me. We didn't even really have much of a conversation. We never really have, honestly. Um, but I just decided at that moment that that was going to be the last time that I ever put myself in that situation again, and I would no longer be interested in a relationship with him or seeing him again. Um, at least until I and I'm able to process and heal from the lifetime really of pain that his absence has caused me, because I realize that there's no point in even trying until I can fully let go of the anger in my heart. So, at this point in my life as a mother, I've realized that children learn by watching, and it is my job to show them healthy relationships as well as healthy habits and coping mechanisms, and that starts at home. And all of this has obviously caused me to look at my marriage and myself a little harder, and it's been crucial, really crucial, to allow myself the time and the space to actually take a step back from daily responsibilities and daily stressors and the daily routine in order to see why and how, my personal suffering has become present in my daily current life, and figure out what things trigger the depression bouts that I go through and the sleepless nights. Um, because really, this can only lead me to a higher self awareness, right? So that I can create change for my children. Because otherwise, if it wasn't for them, I promise you, I would not be doing any of this. I know it's cliche, but when I say that my son saved me, he literally gave me the will to live and the strength to build. Children that grow up fatherless, and specifically as a result of abandonment or divorce, will always wonder what a normal relationship is and what standards are actually acceptable to set. And for me, being able, like, giving my children an emotionally mature and healthy mother is the absolute first step to setting them up for a lifetime of happiness and success. Everything else follows. So, we talked about my father or lack thereof. Now, let's talk about my dad, aka my grandfather, who I lovingly refer to as Mole. You'll hear me say Mole or Mammy from time to time. That's what I call my grandparents. So, Mole comes from his last name, Mullen. All of like the grandfathers in his family were referred to as Mole. And Mammy is, I mean, that's just pretty much made up. She wanted me to call her Granny, but I couldn't pronounce it. And I just kept saying Mammy, and then it just stuck. So they got together when my mom was like 2. And as I mentioned earlier, my mother's real father was a drunk, but he was also abusive. And in my eyes, Mole was my grandmother's knight in shining armor. From the moment that I was born, our bond was instant. I mean, he loved me so much, and you can literally tell by the pictures that you look at of us, like how full I made his heart. Um, and I knew that, and I felt that from him my whole life. And, I'll always say that his love saved my soul. He took me to parks. He did all the dad things. He was silly with me. He got me anything I wanted within reason. I think he spoiled me a bit to kind of overcompensate for other areas of my life. but I think I needed that from at least somebody. He made me like separate dinners when I didn't want something, and he would pop up some mornings before school with like Wawa breakfast sandwiches and give me rides to school, sing the oldies to me, and those were like some of my best mornings ever. And he was just always there for me in like every capacity, to listen, to never like judge or lecture. He never let me down. And I mean, when I tell you there was never one moment in my life that I ever questioned his love for me, he made me, he's probably the only person that ever has made me feel the slightest bit of like genuine worthiness. Um, that all probably sounds crazy. I probably sound nuts, but that's just how I feel. Um, so He died of cancer when I was 15, and it happened over a matter of like 6 months. So to me, it was like kind of sudden. And I didn't really understand at that age what was actually even happening until it happened. Um, I remember he went in for like a routine surgery, something in his stomach. I forget exactly what, but we're in the waiting room for hours and hours and hours. It was taking longer than it should have. And I remember the doctor came out and told us that when they opened him up, they found cancer all throughout his stomach, stage 4 cancer. And from there, he was in the hospital for months. I visited him, obviously, but of course, looking back, not as much as I wish I would have. I don't, I don't think I thought he was going to die, at least not that soon. And one day, I was talking to him on the phone, everything was fine, and he was telling my grandmother to take me to Taco Bell and get me some Mexi Melts because, he was obviously in the hospital and he couldn't take me all the places he wanted to and get me the things he wanted. And he was instructing my grandmom to take me to Taco Bell and, giggling. And the next day, we got a call that he was unresponsive and like literally dying. And to this day, I mean, I don't really understand. I don't really know or understand what happened and like why it happened so suddenly. But I can promise you that anger from this is way deeper than the anger that I felt from my father's absence. When I arrived at the hospital that day, some of my family was already there and surrounding his bed. He was just like laying still with like a blank stare on his face, looking straight up at the ceiling and like blinking like every minute or so, and taking like really deep breaths. He couldn't talk, he couldn't move. And it was just crazy to me. I talked to him fine the day before. I couldn't understand. But I held his hand as he took his last breaths and with my grandmother on the other side of him. And that changed me forever in more ways than I probably even know. But he was my best friend. And the years after that were a blur for real. My drinking and my drug use increased as the years went by. Quite frankly, I should have died a few times. I almost killed people due to reckless behavior, driving under the influence. My life could have and absolutely probably should have been so much different. And I mean, it's for those reasons that I honestly still struggle with the feeling of, being worthy or not of anything at all, of this life that I built. Most importantly, being being worthy of my beautiful children. Um, and I think that always living in this state of survival mode has definitely created a resiliency um, in me that I'm proud of, but also at the same time, it's instilled a fear and anxiety in me. And it's created like this false sense that walking away from things is better than the alternative, which is being rejected or abandoned or let down. It's given me a need to stay in control in order to avoid disappointment, which couldn't be a blessing and a curse that, I've come to learn. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. Like at this moment with this whole topic, I have learned a few things, but I still have so much more to put together, like in order to make this journey beneficial for not just myself, but also for the people around me, and especially for the little family that I've created with my husband. So there's definitely more to speak about on this topic. That is just kind of the intro. Before I start crying on here now. For the second part of this episode, though, I really would like to have a guest with me just to kind of engage in some dialogue and different perspective regarding the topic and potentially share their experiences as well. So if you or someone you know maybe can relate or might be interested in joining me on some discussion, reach out, let me know. Until then, though, we are going to get back to the real estate related ish, all right? All episodes will not be this depressing. And with our next episode, we've got an exciting guest, so stay tuned. Thank you so much for joining me today and listening to my hoopla. I hope it helps someone. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Real Talk Realtor Mama Edition. I hope you found a little inspiration, some fresh ideas, and maybe even had a few laughs along the way. If today's episode resonated with you at all, please subscribe, leave a review, and feel free to share it with someone who might need a little real talk in their life. Follow me on social media. My handle is the same everywhere at Realtor Mama. It's MAMA. Remember, we're all in this together, learning, growing, and finding our way one day at a time. Until next time, keep showing up, keep being real, and keep chasing your dreams. This is Samantha signing off with gratitude and love. See you next time on Real Talk Realtor Mama Edition.